Hi everyone, welcome to today's Characteristics of Living Things lesson for STEM scholars. I'm your tutor, Shubh Varshney. Today, we'll be learning the 7 characteristics of life and also being able to identify something as a living thing, non-living thing, or dead thing. Before that, let's do a quick warm-up. Look around and identify a non-living thing. It can be anything, there's no correct answer. So these were the options that I picked, which was a chair, a laptop, and a couch. But now I want you to explain why it is non-living, and asking why is the most important question ever. Let's dive further into this. I picked a couch as one of my items, and something that's very cool about this is that some couches are actually not non-living. So we have this couch, which is a leather couch, and I'll explain in a bit why it's not non-living. And another thing is that often people say, oh, my item doesn't move, so it's non-living. But the thing is, plants don't move either, but they're living as well. So we cannot have that as a reason for them to be non-living. So how do we explain life? The thing is, we try to define life in one rule, and it's too complicated for that. Instead, we can explain life in 7 simple characteristics, and we ask the essential question, what makes life different? So here's what makes life different. First thing is that they're very ordered. So actually, before I move further, I recommend that you take notes because we'll be using these characteristics for our exercises. Anyway, so let's continue. Living things have an ordered structure. They're organized and made up of cells. What does that mean? Cells are the smallest unit of living thing. So, really, an organism can be just one cell, that's a living thing, or an organism can be trillions of cells. That's us humans, animals, the things that we see pretty often. And the thing is, you can see how in 4 of these photos, the word organ shows up. An organ also shows up in organization. That shows you how organized our bodies and life itself is. Because even cells that are just one cell organisms, they are also divided further into these things called organelles. These organelles perform the functions that we need in order to live as a cell. And cells for humans and animals, they make up tissues, which are a bunch of cells layered for some special task. And these tissues go further to build an organ. And these organs can be our intestines, our stomachs, our hearts, our lungs. And these organs work together in groups of other organs to build organ systems and perform specialized tasks. So we have our circulatory system, which processes blood, our respiratory system, which processes our breathing, and our digestive system, which processes the food we eat and we poop it out. So this really shows the complexity of life starts from this first characteristic. Life just has so much order and organization. Our second characteristic is that living things can make more living things. So this can really happen in 2 ways, especially for us people who have multiple cells and not just one cell. We can first of all make new cells for the organisms that already exist, so like us. You must have gotten a bruise or a wound at some time. You might have scraped off your skin or cut your skin, and either way, you lost cells in that area. So how did your body heal? It reproduced. It made new cells for that area so that you could heal. That's one way life can reproduce. But you can also reproduce yourselves. So organisms reproduce their own kind. So a cat will make a new cat baby. You will make a new baby. And these babies are also just made up of a lot of cells that get together for a lot of time and work to become a new organism. And our third characteristic is that living things grow and develop. So one thing they do is that they increase in size. This is like how plants just grow taller and taller. We also grow taller until at some point, and we also grow wider at some point. So the thing is, growing is not enough. Living things also develop. So yes, they increase in size, but while increasing in size, they also transform and change. So plants, they make flowers, fruit, and that's how they change. But the biggest change you can see in an animal is definitely the butterfly caterpillar relation. They're the same organism, but they change after going through that one stage in the pod. And that's a big thing. Even as humans, we change, even though it's not as much as caterpillars and butterflies, but every living thing has some sort of change going on. And our fourth characteristic is metabolism. Living things often obtain and use materials and energy. So, what does materials and energy look like? That's our food, which includes how this man is eating spaghetti and meatballs, or how that dog is eating his bone snacks. This is food that goes in our systems, goes down our stomach, and gets processed, and then we poop it out. So this entire process is actually part of the metabolism. We're processing the energy so that we can be active and actually move, or take care of our body functions in the case of plants. So even we take care of body functions and we need this energy. But once we also use up the energy, we also need to remove it. So parts of metabolism include using energy. This can be making food, eating food, and also removing this waste, which is made after removing all the energy and materials that we need. So removing the waste is the last part of metabolism, and this is important in life because we cannot function without it. Our fifth characteristic is homeostasis. And what is homeostasis? Homeostasis is basically maintaining our internal selves. So our body temperature should be the same, our blood pressure should be the same, our sugar level should be the same. This is the kind of thing that maintaining homeostasis does. So two very good examples are in body temperature. Basically, when we live outside, we are facing many conditions, but our body needs to stay the way it is. So when it's too hot, our body is releasing cool, and it's increasing in body temperature because there's not enough cold. So what does our body do? It sweats so that it can cool itself down, and that's a way to maintain homeostasis, keeping the same conditions within ourselves. Similarly, when you're too cold, your body is releasing heat. So you start shivering because shivering is a way to preserve your heat. And this is why homeostasis is important, because without homeostasis, your body can get to extreme temperatures, blood pressures, sugar levels, and this can lead to a bunch of problems. Related to this is responding to stimuli. So really, homeostasis can be considered a part of responding to stimuli, because what we're trying to do is respond to what's happening in an environment. So one really important way we can see this is during the fall, when trees are losing leaves and they're changing color. And this is a behavioral response. They're changing their behavior to their environment, which is the weather. Another way that weather affects people is in bears. Bears go hibernate during the winter because it's too cold, and they're responding to the environment that they're in. There's also physiological response, and that's where homeostasis comes in. So we sweat, that's physiological response. We're responding to our hot environment, our cold environment. And dogs, they also have a physiological response. They don't sweat, instead they pant. They pant in order to cool down like we sweat. So this is why this is important and also related to homeostasis. And our last characteristic, which is also very important, is adaptation. We change over time. So we don't just stay that one thing for the entire time. So we can see this from our very long history. This is a long-term change that happened to us as humans, and it was passed down from parents to children. This was called evolution. So we started from an ancestor This same ancestor made monkeys, gorillas, apes, chimpanzees, etc. And these same ancestors also developed into us. So we changed over time, and we're still changing, even though we cannot view it in our lifetime because 100 years for evolution is very small. It takes a lot of years. Like I'm thinking thousands in order for something to change in humans. And that is why adaptation is important. So we can change based on how our environment is changing and how we can live for longer in the environment that we're in. So, how do we use these characteristics? We want to use these characteristics to identify whether something is living, non living, or dead. And here you can see a couch again. This couch, like I said, I would explain, is made out of leather. And leather comes from cows or any other animals, but mostly cows are famous for giving off their leather. So, how is leather taken from cows? Cows usually are killed, and in that process, leather is obtained. So, leather used to be the skin cells of a cow. That means that leather used to be made up of cells, and that means it was ordered, and so it reproduced if the skin was removed. And if you keep going through the characteristics, you'll see that this used to be a living thing, or at least part of a living thing. So we can think of the leather couch as dead. So it's not non living because it did have these characteristics at one point. This is why the cow itself is living. It processes energy, as you can see. It's eating grass. It reproduces and makes calves. It has cells. It's made up of cells. It's organized. And we keep going through these characteristics, which I encourage you to pause the video and go through these characteristics to see why a cow is a living thing. But if we keep going through these, we see why it's living. On the other hand, this plastic bag is non-living. Why? Because it doesn't have many of these characteristics. Because it doesn't process energy. You can't feed a plastic bag, and it can't just start making babies either. A plastic bag does not reproduce, and it's not made up of cells. So let's start doing some exercises related to identifying something as non-living, living, or dead. So I hope you took notes. So let's do the checklist. I'll give you some time to work this out yourself. You can circle the checklist and decide whether fire is living, non-living, or dead. So let's answer exercise 1 now. So our first checklist is order. Is fire in order? Is it organized? And we'd be quick to say no, because fire is not made up of cells, and it's just one state of matter that's really just randomly burning things. And we'd be quick to give up now, and we're saying, oh, it's not one of the characteristics, so we of course know it's non-living. But one good practice is to always test all of the cases, even if you're not done, or even if you figured it out. So let's do item number 2, which is reproduction. So does fire reproduce? And I'd say yes, it does, because if you were to take fire and put it somewhere else, it'd grow into another fire. And that takes us to our next part, which is growth and development. Fire does grow in size. It grows bigger. But development, I do not think fire develops. It does not transform or change. It stays fire, it just grows in size, but it does not develop. And then we go to characteristic 4, which is our metabolism. So fire does use energy. If you were to put oil or any kind of fat in fire, you'd see it grows. And that shows you that fire does use energy. And now let's go to homeostasis. So really, fire does not maintain homeostasis. There's no internal conditions that fire is maintaining. If you were to make it really cold or you were to put water, fire would be put out. And similarly, fire does not respond to its environment. You are not going to touch fire, and fire is not going to respond to it. Fire is just going to be put out if water is there, or it's going to spread if it can. And then step 7, evolve and adapt. So fire does not adapt to its surroundings. Fire is the same when you're burning something, and it doesn't really change into a better fire that burns more stuff. It just gets bigger. And this is why we can see that it does not have many of the characteristics, so we cannot say fire is living. So since it's not living, it was not ever living, so we can consider fire non-living. Let's take a look at exercise number 2. Once again, I'll give you some time to work it out. Okay, so let's go through exercise 2. This is some kind of meat, and meat comes from animals. So let's look at animals. Let's take an example, which is a chicken. So are chickens reproducive? Are they ordered? Do they metabolize? Do they have homeostasis? Do they respond to their stimuli? Do they adapt? And do they grow and develop? And I want you to think about these and realize that really chickens do all 7 of these. So that makes it so that a chicken is living. But be careful, this isn't living, because at this stage, it's not growing anymore, it's not developing anymore, it's been fried, so it doesn't really process any more energy. It might still be ordered, but it's also not changing and adapting anymore. So we can see that it used to have these stages at one point, but it does not have any longer. So when we see this, we know that this is a dead organism. So it's not non-living because it used to have these characteristics, but now it doesn't. So it's dead. Let's go to exercise 3. Once again, I'll give you some time to pause the video and think it through. Okay, let's start. So is this living, non-living, or dead? So let's think through the checklist. Right now, this box isn't, it might be ordered because it's made up of those small papers, and these papers have a sense of organization in them. But right now, it's not made of cells. And then number 2, we're thinking reproduction. A box can't make another box unless you make the other box, so it's not doing it independently. And then number 3, a box does not grow and develop, it stays how it was made. Similarly, a box does not use energy, a box doesn't really change itself to fix its internal environment. Whatever's in it, it stays, and it doesn't respond to whatever's happening outside of it. And boxes don't evolve, so they don't change into something better to hold items. So we would be close to say that a box is non-living, right? But be careful. What are boxes made out of? Whenever you're thinking of non-living versus dead, you always want to make sure you know what that item was made out of. So boxes are made out of cardboard, which is made out of paper, and paper comes from trees. And trees were in fact living because they're plants. And plants are made up of cells. They do reproduce. They do grow and develop. And if we go through the checklist, we see that plants in fact do live. So since this was previously a plant, we can classify this as dead. And here's our answers. Exercise 1, non-living. It does not have all 7 of them. Exercise 2, it used to have all 7 of them. And exercise 3, it used to have all 7 of them. So we have the non-living, dead, and dead. I hope you understand. If you don't, I would really encourage to go back and get through the characteristics one by one and explain to yourself why this item used to or does have these characteristics or just never did. So let's evaluate ourselves. Do you think you can define the 7 characteristics of life? And do you think that you can correctly identify something as living, non-living, or dead? If you are around 3 and 4, you're good. You might want to just study to keep maintaining the knowledge. And if you're 1 and 2, I recommend going back and thinking more or using our extra resources. So I gave you a Quizlet here. You can copy the link if you have access to the slideshow, or you can just do it manually, type it in the URL. And there's a worksheet to practice this. The worksheet does have some stuff that's more advanced, but I think if you can use Google to your advantage, you will definitely learn more and have a strong understanding of this topic. And here's a challenge. I want you to write CER, which is what every scientist writes at one point, a claim, evidence, reasoning. And I want you to write it on the topic of viruses. So viruses are debatable. Some scientists are thinking that they're alive, but a lot of them are thinking that they're not alive. And viruses are actually, I want you to research more about viruses and form your own opinion. Be sure to claim it with evidence from research and connect this evidence with 7 characteristics. So, use the things that you have learned to prove why you think viruses are living or not. Also, please ignore this. Some are living while some are not. I didn't mean to add that. Thank you. Thanks for listening to my presentation. I hope you understand the characteristics of living things better now. And here's some extra practice in case you need it. Good luck. Bye. Have a good day.